Jack, a young and adventurous human explorer, couldn't contain his excitement as he boarded the interstellar ship. He had been selected to join a multi-species expedition to an uncharted planet, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any explorer worth their salt. The team consisted of representatives from various alien races, each bringing their unique skills and knowledge to the mission. As the ship took off, Jack found himself in the briefing room with his fellow team members. The expedition leader, a tall, slender alien with piercing blue eyes, began the meeting with a grave warning. "Listen up, everyone. Our destination is a planet that has never been explored by any of our species. We have limited information, but what we do know is that it is home to the Drazics, a highly intelligent and lethal predator species." The room fell silent as the leader continued. The Drazics are known for their ferocity and hostility towards any creatures they perceive as a threat. They are apex predators, with razor-sharp claws, incredible strength, and unmatched cunning. We must be extremely cautious and follow all safety protocols during our mission. Jack felt a mix of fear and excitement coursing through his veins. He had heard stories of the Drazics, whispered tales of their ruthlessness, and the way they could tear through even the strongest of armor with ease. But he was determined to prove himself on this expedition, to show that humans were just as capable as any other species in the galaxy. As the ship approached the planet, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the view from the observation deck. The planet was a lush green, with vast oceans and sprawling mountain ranges visible even from orbit. It seemed almost too beautiful to be home to such a fearsome creature. The team prepared to land, donning their protective gear and double-checking their equipment. Jack felt the weight of his exploration suit as he stepped into the airlock, his heart pounding with anticipation. The moment they set foot on the planet's surface, Jack was overwhelmed by the alien world around him. The air was thick and humid, filled with the scents of unknown flora. Strange bird-like creatures soared overhead, their cries echoing through the dense foliage. The team quickly set up their base camp, a series of interconnected habitat modules designed to provide a safe haven from the planet's dangers. Jack was assigned to help with the perimeter defenses, setting up motion sensors and energy barriers to alert them of any potential threats. As the days passed, the team began to explore the surrounding area, cautiously venturing out in small groups. They collected samples, documented the alien plant and animal life, and searched for any signs of the Drazics. Jack found himself increasingly drawn to the planet's mysteries. He would often volunteer for scouting missions, eager to push the boundaries of their explored territory. His teammates admired his bravery, but also cautioned him against taking unnecessary risks. One day, while on a solo scouting mission, Jack ventured further than he had ever gone before. The terrain grew more treacherous, with dense undergrowth and steep rocky cliffs. As he pushed through a particularly thick patch of foliage, he suddenly found himself face to face with a sight that made his blood run cold. There, just a few meters away, stood a lone Drazics. Its sleek, muscular body was covered in jet-black scales, and its piercing yellow eyes locked onto Jack's own. Jack froze, his heart pounding in his chest as he remembered all the warnings about the Drazics' lethal nature. But something was different about this encounter. The Drazics didn't immediately attack. Instead, it tilted its head, almost as if it were curious about the strange, soft-skinned creature standing before it. Jack, against his better judgment, found himself taking a cautious step forward, his hand slowly reaching for the universal translator clipped to his belt. Little did Jack know that this moment would change the course of not only his own life, but the fate of the entire galaxy. For in that brief, tense exchange, the seeds of an unlikely friendship were about to be sown, one that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Drazics and the power of understanding between species. Jack's heart raced as he stood face to face with the Drazics, the creature he had been warned about since the start of the expedition. He had expected the Drazics to attack immediately, to live up to its reputation as the galaxy's most lethal predator. But instead, the creature seemed to be studying him with an almost curious expression. Slowly, Cautiously, Jack reached for his universal translator, never taking his eyes off the Drazics. He knew that trying to communicate with the creature went against every protocol he had been taught, but something about the way the Drazics was behaving made him think that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for understanding. As he activated the translator, Jack spoke softly, his voice trembling slightly. "Hello. I mean you no harm." The Drazics tilted its head, its yellow eyes narrowing slightly. For a moment, Jack thought he had made a terrible mistake. But then, to his utter amazement, the creature spoke. "You are not like the others," it said, its voice deep and rumbling, with an almost metallic edge to it. "Why do you not attack?" Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his composure. "I don't want to fight," he said. "I'm here to learn, to understand." The Drazics considered this for a moment, then took a step closer to Jack. Jack fought the urge to back away, knowing that any sudden movements could be interpreted as a threat. "I am called Zack," the Drazic said. "And you are?" "Jack," he replied, hardly believing that he was having a conversation with a creature that was supposed to be his mortal enemy. Over the next few hours, Jack and Zack talked, learning about each other's worlds and cultures. Zack explained that the Drazics were not inherently hostile, but had learned to be wary of other species after centuries of being hunted and exploited. Jack, in turn, told Zack about the expedition and its goal of peaceful exploration and discovery. As the sun began to set, Jack knew he had to return to the base camp. He bid farewell to Zack, promising to return the next day. When he arrived back at the camp, his teammates were shocked to see him alive and unarmed. "What happened out there?" the expedition leader demanded. "We thought you had been killed by the Drazics." Jack hesitated, knowing that what he was about to say would be met with disbelief and possibly even hostility. But he knew he had to tell the truth. "I met a Drazics," he said, "and we talked. His name is Zack, and he's not what we thought. The Drazics aren't mindless killers. They're intelligent, and they have their own culture and history." The team was stunned into silence. Some looked at Jack with skepticism, others with outright hostility. But Jack stood his ground, knowing that he had made a discovery that could change the course of the expedition, and possibly even the galaxy itself. Over the next few weeks, Jack continued to meet with Zack, learning more about the Drazics and their way of life. He even brought some of his teammates to meet Zack, though many were still wary of the creature. As word of Jack's unlikely friendship with Zack spread, it began to cause ripples throughout the galaxy. Some saw it as a sign of hope, a chance for peace and understanding between species that had long been at odds. Others saw it as a threat, a dangerous precedent that could upset the balance of power. But Jack knew that he had stumbled upon something special, something that could change the course of history, and he was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. As Jack and Zack continued to meet and learn from each other, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. The expedition team watched in awe as the human and the Drazics, two species that were supposed to be mortal enemies, formed a friendship that defied all expectations. Jack learned about the Drazics' complex social structure, their intricate language, and their deep connection to the planet they called home. Zack, in turn, was fascinated by Jack's stories of the wider galaxy, of the countless species and worlds he had encountered on his travels. Together, they explored the planet, with Zack showing Jack the hidden wonders that the expedition team had never even dreamed of. They swam in crystal-clear lakes, climbed towering mountains, and marveled at the beauty of the alien world around them. But their friendship was not without its challenges. Some members of the expedition team remained deeply suspicious of Zack, convinced that he was simply biding his time before turning on them. Others saw Jack as a traitor, a human who had turned his back on his own kind in favor of an alien predator. Despite the opposition, Jack remained steadfast in his belief that his friendship with Zack was a force for good. He knew that if he could just show the galaxy that the Drazics were not the monsters they were made out to be, it could change everything. One day, while exploring a particularly remote part of the planet, Jack and Zach made a startling discovery. Hidden deep within a cave system was an ancient Drazix temple, filled with intricate carvings and artifacts that told the story of the Drazix's past. As they explored the temple, Zach revealed to Jack the true history of his people. Long ago, the Drazix had been a peaceful species, living in harmony with the other creatures of their world. But then, a great cataclysm had struck the planet, wiping out most of the life on its surface. The Drazix had survived, but at a terrible cost. The trauma of the cataclysm had changed them, turning them into the fierce and territorial creatures they were today. They had learned to trust no one but themselves, to view all other species as potential threats. But Zach believed that things could be different. He saw in Jack the potential for a new way forward, a path towards peace and understanding between the Drazix and the rest of the galaxy. Together, Jack and Zach hatched a plan. They would bring the expedition team to the temple to show them the truth about the Drazix's past. They would prove that the Drazix were not the monsters they were made out to be, but rather a species with a rich history and culture, one that had been shaped by tragedy and trauma. At first, the team was hesitant. Many still viewed Zach with suspicion and fear, but as they explored the temple and learned the truth about the Drazix, their attitudes began to shift. They saw the intricate carvings and artwork that adorned the temple walls, the beautiful and haunting depictions of the Drazix's past. They heard Zach's stories of his people's struggles and triumphs, of their deep connection to the world around them. And slowly but surely, they began to see the Drazix in a new light, not as monsters or enemies, but as a species with a complex and fascinating history, one that had been shaped by the same forces that had shaped all life in the galaxy. As the team prepared to leave the planet and return to the wider galaxy, Jack knew that his work was far from over. He had made a promise to Zach, a promise to help build a new future for the Drazix and for all the species of the galaxy. And he knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would never give up on that promise. For he had seen firsthand the power of friendship and understanding, and he knew that it was the key to a brighter tomorrow for all. As Jack and Zach's friendship continued to grow, so too did Jack's understanding of the Drazix and their way of life. Through their many conversations and adventures together, Jack began to see that the Drazix were not the mindless, brutal predators that the galaxy had always believed them to be. Zach shared with Jack the stories of his people, of their struggles and triumphs over the centuries. He told of how the Drazix had once been a peaceful species, living in harmony with the world around them. But then, a great disaster had struck their planet, a cataclysm that had nearly wiped out all life on its surface. The Drazix had survived, but at a terrible cost. The trauma of the disaster had changed them, turning them into the fierce and territorial creatures they were today. They had learned to trust no one but themselves, to view all other species as potential threats. But Zach believed that things could be different. He saw in Jack the potential for a new way forward, a path towards peace and understanding between the Drazix and the rest of the galaxy. Jack was deeply moved by Zach's stories. He saw the pain and suffering that the Drazix had endured, the scars that they carried with them to this day. And he knew that he had to do something to help. With Zach's guidance, Jack began to piece together a plan. He would return to the wider galaxy, to the great halls of power and influence, and he would share the truth about the Drazix with anyone who would listen. He would tell them of the Drazix's rich history and culture, of their deep connection to the world around them. He would show them that the Drazix were not monsters, but rather a species that had been shaped by tragedy and trauma, just like so many others in the galaxy. But Jack knew that he could not do it alone. He needed allies, people who could help him spread the word and build support for his cause. And so he turned to his fellow expedition members. Many of them had come to see the Drazix in a new light, thanks to their interactions with Zach and their explorations of the ancient Drazix temple. They had seen the beauty and complexity of Drazix culture, and they knew that the galaxy's perceptions of them were deeply flawed. Together, Jack and his allies began to plan their return to the wider galaxy. They would bring with them the evidence they had gathered, the stories and artifacts that would help them make their case. But they knew that they would face opposition. There were many in the galaxy who had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, who saw the Drezics as nothing more than a threat to be contained or eliminated. And so Jack and his allies prepared themselves for the battles to come. They trained and planned, gathering resources and building alliances wherever they could. Through it all, Zack remained a constant presence, a source of wisdom and guidance for Jack and his team. He knew that the path ahead would be difficult, that there would be many challenges and obstacles to overcome. But he also knew that Jack was special, that he had the power to change the galaxy in ways that no one else could. And so, he pledged himself to Jack's cause, to the dream of a future where the Drezics and all the other species of the galaxy could live together in peace and harmony. As they prepared to leave the planet and embark on their great mission, Jack felt a sense of purpose and determination that he had never known before. He knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, that there would be many dangers and sacrifices along the way. But he also knew that he was not alone. He had Zack by his side, and a team of brave and dedicated allies who shared his vision for a better future. And so, with hope in their hearts and fire in their eyes, they set out to change the galaxy, one mind at a time. As Jack and his team began their journey back to the wider galaxy, they knew that they were embarking on a mission that would change the course of history. They had seen the truth about the Drezics, and they knew that they had to share that truth with the rest of the galaxy. But they also knew that they would face opposition. The news of Jack and Zack's friendship had already begun to spread, and it was causing shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Some saw it as a sign of hope, a chance for peace and understanding between species that had long been at odds. But others saw it as a threat, a challenge to the established order that had governed the galaxy for centuries. As they traveled from planet to planet, Jack and his team were met with a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and outright hostility. Many refused to believe that a human could have formed a genuine friendship with the Drezics, let alone that the Drezics were anything other than the monsters they had always been portrayed as. But Jack refused to be deterred. He spoke passionately about his experiences with Zack and the other Drezics, about their rich history and culture, and about the trauma and tragedy that had shaped them into the creatures they were today. He showed the evidence he had gathered, the artifacts and recordings that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Drezics were not the mindless predators that the galaxy had always believed them to be. And slowly but surely, he began to win people over. Some were skeptical at first, but as they listened to Jack's stories and saw the evidence for themselves, they began to see the Drezics in a new light. But not everyone was convinced. There were many who saw Jack and his team as a threat, a challenge to the status quo that they had worked so hard to maintain. They attacked Jack and his allies at every turn, spreading lies and misinformation about the Drezics, and even resorting to violence when they felt it was necessary. Jack found himself facing opposition from some of the most powerful individuals and organizations in the galaxy, including his own superiors back on Earth. They demanded that he cease his mission, that he return to Earth, and forget about the Drezics and his foolish dreams of peace and understanding. But Jack refused to back down. He knew that he was on the right side of history, and he was determined to see his mission through to the end, no matter the cost. And so, he pressed on, traveling from planet to planet, speaking to anyone who would listen, and slowly but surely building a movement that would change the galaxy forever. Through it all, Zack remained by his side, a constant source of support and encouragement. He knew that Jack was risking everything for the sake of the Drezics, and he was determined to do whatever he could to help. Together, they faced down the challenges and the dangers, the doubters and the naysayers. They knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, but they also knew that they had the power to change the galaxy, to build a future where all species could live together in peace and harmony. And so, with fire in their hearts and hope in their eyes, they pressed on, determined to see their mission through to the end, no matter the cost. As they traveled deeper into the heart of the galaxy, They knew that they were drawing ever closer to the final showdown, the moment when they would either triumph or be destroyed. But they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the support of a growing movement of individuals and organizations who shared their vision for a better future. And so, with their heads held high and their hearts full of courage, they prepared themselves for the battles to come, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and to build a galaxy that was truly worthy of all the species who called it home. As Jack and his team continued their mission to spread the truth about the Drazics, they knew that they were making progress. More and more people were beginning to see the Drazics in a new light, to understand that they were not the monsters they had always been portrayed as. But they also knew that they had made powerful enemies, individuals and organizations who saw their mission as a threat to the established order. And so it came as no surprise when they were attacked, a group of extremists who were determined to stop them at any cost. The attack came without warning, a sudden and violent assault on the team's base camp. The extremists were heavily armed and well-trained, and they quickly overwhelmed the team's defenses. Jack and Zack found themselves in the middle of a fierce battle, fighting side by side against a relentless enemy. They knew that they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they refused to give up. Together, they rallied the team, organizing a desperate defense against the attackers. They used every trick and tactic they had learned, every bit of knowledge and skill they had acquired over the course of their mission. And slowly but surely, they began to turn the tide. They fought with a ferocity and determination that shocked even their enemies, a will to survive and succeed that was unmatched in the galaxy. In the end, they emerged victorious, the attackers retreating in disarray. But the cost had been high. Many of the team had been wounded, some seriously, and the base camp lay in ruins, a smoking wreck of twisted metal and shattered dreams. But even in the midst of the chaos and the destruction, Jack and Zack knew that they had achieved something important. They had shown the galaxy the true strength of their bond, the power of their friendship and their shared vision for a better future. And they knew that they could not stop now. They had to press on, to continue their mission no matter the cost. And so they began to rebuild, to gather their strength and their resources for the battles to come. They reached out to their allies, to the individuals and organizations who shared their vision, and they began to plan their next move. They knew that they would face more challenges, more obstacles and dangers in the days and weeks ahead. But they also knew that they had the power to overcome them, to build a galaxy that was truly worthy of all the species who called it home. As they worked to repair the damage and heal the wounds, both physical and emotional, Jack and Zack found themselves growing even closer. They had been through so much together, had faced down so many challenges, and emerged stronger for it. And they knew that they would need that strength, that bond, in the days to come. For they were not just fighting for themselves, or even for the Drazics. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself, for the dream of a universe where all species could live together in peace and harmony. It was a dream that many had thought impossible, a vision that had been dismissed as naive and foolish by the powers that be. But Jack and Zack knew that it was a dream worth fighting for, a vision that was worth any sacrifice. And so, with renewed determination and unbreakable resolve, they set out once again, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and to build a galaxy that was truly worthy of all the species who called it home. They knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, that there would be many more battles to fight and sacrifices to make. But they also knew that they were not alone, that they had the support of a growing movement of individuals and organizations who shared their vision for a better future. And so, with hope in their hearts and fire in their eyes, they pressed on, determined to see their mission through to the end, no matter the cost, and to build a galaxy that was truly worthy of all the species who called it home. In the aftermath of the attack on their base camp, Jack and Zack knew that they had to take their mission to the next level. They had shown the galaxy the true strength of their bond, but they also knew that they needed more than just friendship to change the hearts and minds of an entire universe. And so, with the support of a small but dedicated group of allies, they set out on a new mission, to engage in diplomacy with the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions and species. It was a daunting task, one that would require all of their skill and knowledge, as well as a healthy dose of luck. But Jack and Zack were determined to see it through, no matter the cost. Their first stop was the capital planet of the galaxy's most powerful empire, a vast and sprawling metropolis that was home to some of the most influential individuals in the universe. Jack and Zack knew that they would face resistance here, that there were many who saw their mission as a threat to the established order. But they also knew that they had to try, that they had to do everything in their power to build bridges and forge new alliances. And so, with a mixture of nervousness and determination, they set out to meet with the Empire's leaders, to share their story and their vision for a better future. To their surprise, they were greeted with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, rather than outright hostility. The leaders of the Empire were intrigued by Jack and Zack's story, by the idea of a human and a Drazix working together to build a new future for the galaxy. But they were also wary, unsure of whether this was truly possible, or whether it was simply a naive dream that would inevitably fall apart. Over the course of several days, Jack and Zack worked tirelessly to build trust and understanding with the Empire's leaders. They shared their experiences and their knowledge, their hopes and their dreams for a galaxy where all species could live together in peace and harmony. And slowly but surely, they began to make progress. The leaders of the Empire began to see the potential in Jack and Zack's vision, to understand that a future of cooperation and collaboration was not only possible, but necessary for the survival and prosperity of all. With each passing day, Jack and Zack's confidence grew, as did the support for their mission. They met with leaders from other factions and species, sharing their story and their vision with anyone who would listen. And as they traveled from planet to planet, they began to see the impact of their efforts. More and more individuals and organizations began to express interest in their mission, to offer their support and their resources to help make their vision a reality. But Jack and Zack knew that they still had a long way to go. They knew that there were still many who opposed their efforts, who saw their mission as a threat to their own power and influence. And so, they pressed on, determined to build a coalition of like-minded individuals and organizations that could help them achieve their goals. They met with leaders from all corners of the galaxy, from the most powerful empires to the smallest and most isolated colonies. They listened to their concerns and their hopes, their fears and their dreams. And through it all, they remained true to their mission, to their vision of a galaxy where all species could live together in peace and harmony. It was a long and difficult road, one that was fraught with challenges and setbacks at every turn. But Jack and Zack refused to give up, refused to let their dream die. And slowly but surely, they began to see the fruits of their labors. More and more factions and species began to join their cause, to lend their support and their resources to the mission. And as their coalition grew, so too did their influence and their power. They began to shape the course of galactic events, to steer the universe towards a brighter and more hopeful future. And through it all, Jack and Zack remained at the center of it all, the driving force behind the movement that would change the galaxy forever. Years had passed since Jack and Zack first embarked on their mission to change the galaxy's perception of the Drazix and build a future of peace and cooperation among all species. And in that time, they had achieved more than they ever could have imagined. Their efforts had led to a new era of interspecies cooperation and understanding, one where the Drazix were no longer feared and reviled, but respected and valued for their unique skills and knowledge. The galaxy had changed, and Jack and Zack had been at the forefront of that change. They had become symbols of hope and unity, living proof that even the most unlikely of friendships could change the course of history. But even as they celebrated their successes, Jack and Zack knew that their work was far from over. There were still many challenges to be faced, many obstacles to be overcome. And so, they continued their mission, traveling from planet to planet, meeting with leaders and citizens alike, always striving to build bridges and forge new alliances. They visited schools and universities, sharing their story with the next generation of leaders and thinkers. They spoke of the importance of understanding and cooperation, of the need to look beyond superficial differences and find common ground. And everywhere they went, they were greeted with warmth and enthusiasm, with a kind of respect and admiration that they had once thought impossible. But even as they basked in the glow of their success, Jack and Zach knew that they could not rest on their laurels. They knew that there was always more work to be done, always more progress to be made. And so they continued to push themselves, to challenge themselves and each other to be better, to do more. They took on new projects and initiatives, always seeking out new ways to make a difference in the lives of those around them. They worked tirelessly to build a galaxy that was truly worthy of all the species who called it home. And through it all, they remained true to their friendship, to the bond that had brought them together and sustained them through even the darkest of times. They were more than just partners or colleagues. They were family, bound together by a love and loyalty that knew no bounds. And as they looked back on all that they had accomplished, Jack and Zach knew that they had truly made a difference. They had changed the galaxy, not through force or coercion, but through the power of understanding and compassion. They had shown that even the most intractable of conflicts could be resolved, that even the deepest of divisions could be healed. And in doing so, they had become an inspiration to countless others, a shining example of what was possible when individuals from different backgrounds and cultures came together in the spirit of peace and cooperation. As they grew older, Jack and Zach began to pass the torch to a new generation of leaders and visionaries, those who would carry on their work and build upon their legacy. They knew that the galaxy was in good hands, that the future was bright and full of promise. And so, they began to step back, to enjoy the fruits of their labors and the company of each other. They spent their days exploring new worlds and revisiting old favorites, always marveling at the beauty and diversity of the galaxy they had helped to shape. And in the evenings, they would sit together under the stars, sharing stories and memories, laughing and reminiscing about all that they had been through together. They were at peace, content in the knowledge that they had lived a life of purpose and meaning, that they had made a difference in the lives of so many. And as they looked out at the vast expanse of the galaxy before them, Jack and Zach knew that their legacy would live on, that their story would be told and retold for generations to come. They were the stuff of legend now, the human and the Drazics who had defied the odds and changed the course of history. And they knew that, no matter what the future held, they would always have each other and the bond that had brought them together and sustained them through it all.